All right, welcome back to One Bills Live. Chris Brown, Steve Tasker with you here on a Wednesday, and pleased to be joined now by ESPN NFL analyst, former NFL QB Dan Orlovsky, whose segment is brought to you by Ellicott Hotels. Fans, round up your family, friends, or coworkers for a fantastic game day experience at 500 Pearl. Reserve your pack and book your group event today at 500pearlbuffalo.com. All right, Dan, so the Bills continue to excel in the wild card round. Josh with a turnover-free performance, a ridiculous 52-yard touchdown run along with 3 touchdown passes. And while Diggs is a part of it, in terms of, moving the sticks, 7 receptions, 52 yards, I think you're really starting to see the diversity of this passing game shine maybe at just the right time. What were your thoughts on the way the ball was spread around in the passing game Sunday for the Bills?
Yeah, it's really become their identity in many ways. And I think, Chris, when it started to be that, and it happened a little bit before Joe Brady took over, but certainly has become a bigger part of the conversations since Joe's taken over, it was almost viewed as a negative. It was almost viewed as a downside or why can't Steph Diggs get the football or something like that. And now you're starting to see the real dividends and the real stress that it puts on a defense. I love the fact that they move Steph around, and sometimes they have him in the slot. Sometimes they have him outside. Sometimes they have him at the number 3 position. It's the same with Shakir. Sometimes he's in the slot by himself. Sometimes he's in the number 3 spot, and they're just creating really good matchups. Obviously, Gabe this past weekend, and then Dalton. So I look at it like this. So often their pass game was a perimeter pass game, and it was really, really, really good for the most part. Now they have the ability to have a, vertical and horizontal pass game, a 53 and a third pass game. And there's so many different people that can hurt a defense in the midfield or gain that matchup. So for that stuff, I have been and remain a fan of the diversity and the versatility that the pass game has kind of developed.
Talk to us a little bit about why the 2 tight ends for Buffalo are such a different kind of animal, because, they caught the first 2 touchdown passes this last week. And now in the last couple of weeks, we talked about it a lot in the preseason, but in the last couple of weeks, they started sending those guys deeper. We've seen them catch the ball on the run down the field, certainly the touchdown pass. And then twice in the first couple of drives to Kincaid, they got him on these deep over routes and then on the seam route for the touchdown. Why is that? What's it do to a defense?
Yeah, first of all, it changes things before the snap. You are consistently forcing defenses to decide and declare how they're going to play with certain people. Are you going to leave linebackers on the field? And that's been part of the evolution of the run and James Cook. Are you going to leave linebackers on the field? Well, if you're going to leave linebackers on the field and try to make sure that you can hold down the run a little bit more, well, then both those players are athletic enough and fast enough vertically to get down the field and try to create some explosive plays versus 2 high safeties. If you guys remember, Josh sat down with Kevin Clark, who now works for ESPN, and one of the, really great quotes is Josh saying, defenses play me differently. And I have to realize that. And that's part of his growth and development. And so if defenses are going to sit here and try to take away some of the big plays down the field and make Josh Allen, who's this crazy explosive athlete, be boring and drive the field and protect against the big throw, you're trying to figure out ways that you can get some of those big throws. And that's one of them, is put those tight ends on the field. And the Kincaid touchdown right off the turnover is the perfect example of it. Hey, if you're going to play with extra backers on the field because we got 2 tight ends on the field, then we're going to try to at least give ourselves the chance to go down the field. And I think that's the biggest part of it, is not only a scheme and formational problem, it's also a matchup problem. You have to then be athletic enough and still physical enough to cover those guys. And then, you got to tackle them as well. And that's a challenge in and of itself with those guys.
Taking a look at the Chiefs now in this divisional round, Dan, you've got, it was a nip and tuck game when they faced each other about 6 weeks ago in the regular season. Both quarterbacks held below their season averages by 2 pretty good defenses. The defense for the Bills could look a lot different this week. We'll have to see what it looks like at the end of the week with all the injuries they sustained in the win over Pittsburgh. For Kansas City, the thing that I can't understand is second in the league in points allowed. really good, against the pass, and pretty good against the run as well. I mean, the defense is the strength of their team. I remember us talking to you about that the last time these two teams faced off. The thing I can't wrap my head around is their lack of takeaways. They've got like 13, 14 takeaways on the season. It's like the second fewest in the league. They're averaging less than one per game. Yeah. How can a defense be so good yardage wise, but not be that opportunistic in terms of taking the ball away? Is there something that jumps out at you on that, or is that just a weird anomaly here?
I actually think those are the harder defenses to play against. It's the opposite of, like, my viewpoint is the Dallas defense. The Dallas defense is great when they're getting takeaways, or when you're put in positions to kind of be forceful with the football or panicky with the football. Kansas City's defense suffocates you. It chokes you out. It forces you to play in a brand of hesitation. The movement that they constantly present is something that so often, that's why sacks, I bet you their sack totals are probably pretty good, just because
57.
So the quarterback so often holds the ball because you don't know what you're looking at. And instead of thinking, oh, I know what I see, and you cut it loose, and maybe you were wrong, you don't know what you're looking at. So there's very little clarity with how the quarterback plays. And so more often than not, instead of the turnover, they get the sack or the TFL. And so I think their defense is very good. It really is. And I think that they've gone to a new level now that they're fully healthy on the back end. And, the way that they are changing the picture, you're going to hear that a lot, really, for both sides of the offenses in this game. What offense, and I'm not saying quarterback in this one, I'm saying offense. What offense handles the change of picture best when the defense shows one thing pre-snap and another thing post-snap? What offense? Because I'll tell you right now, I would be floored if in obvious situations, Buffalo doesn't walk everybody up to the line of scrimmage on a consistent basis and say, we're not going to allow you to chip those tackles. We're going to get one-on-ones for some of these edge rushers. So, and then against Kansas City, it's going to be, hey, Josh is going to have to be really good with his eyes, post-snap and pre-snap, and his instincts, and seeing all the picture and change in rotations.
Yeah, this kind of game with these two quarterbacks, and we've seen in these in the wild card weekend that we just saw, I thought it was brought out in stark contrast. You've got quarterbacks who can make plays from the pocket, no question about it. When they're clean, when it's clear for them, they can make. They're like Tua, like Dak Prescott. But you get guys like Josh, like Lamar, like Mahomes, C.J. Stroud, Jordan Love. These quarterbacks, they don't do it. They don't have to do it all the time. They can beat you from the pocket when it's clean and but they can go off script and make the perfect defensive call, an offensive touchdown. That's kind of the line of demarcation for the quarterback. Even in the playoffs, when you got really good teams and rosters around these guys, the line of demarcation is, can you turn a really good defensive play into a win as a quarterback? And the guys that are left seem to be able to do that.
Yeah, Steve, I kind of phrase it as this: can you go get your own shot off? There's a lot of quarterbacks that, when I'm on the dry erase board and I draw you, you're going to pull off this screen. We're going to set a pick for you. We're going to give you a bounce pass. I'm going to get you an open jumper. There's a lot of those guys that can knock down open jumpers. But when you get into these situations, it's like, hey, we can't get you open. They're too good. You got to go get to the rim yourself and either finish or go get to the foul line. That's kind of the way I phrase it. And I think, Patrick was the first guy for me that I said, you could have the perfect defensive call, and those 11 guys on the field can play it absolutely perfect, and it won't matter. And I would be surprised that this game doesn't come down to that. I would be surprised if this game doesn't come down to, hey, Josh, it's 3rd and 7, and oh my gosh, no one's open, and you shrug off somebody and go run for a first down, and everyone's got their hands on their head on Kansas City saying again, or the vice versa. Patrick, 3rd and 18, and he hangs and he, scrambles away. And so those guys and their ability to do that is very much so what separates them, and it's going to be even more so the case to get to the title game, surely.
Looking back at that Week 14 game between them, it seemed that Kansas City was dead set on, keeping the Bills passing game under wraps. And as a result, Cook had a pretty productive day, not only running the ball, but kind of out of the backfield, getting out in space, in the flat areas and that kind of thing, check down routes. Do you think that the Chiefs flip that script a little? Because it was interesting to see the Steelers put a lot of focus on Cook last week, almost as if he was like their primary weapon. It was kind of strange. There were times where there's like two guys with Cook when he's flaring out and stuff. And I was like, wow, they're really worried about this guy. And it's almost like they forgot about everything else. I'm wondering if the Chiefs, based on the first meeting, maybe put a little more attention on Cook and if that could lead to opportunities elsewhere.
The only problem with that is the two tight ends and Shakir's emergence, that's part of that diversity conversation. The Spags is one of the best big game defensive play callers in football. And I think what's going to be awesome, or like the most important part of all that, is two things that'll have to be huge. Rules. The rules of this offense will have to be huge, because there's just going to be times when Josh is going to stand there and go, they have a clip against Miami last week. It's 4th and 1. Okay. The Chiefs, it's 4th and 1. They line up with two defensive linemen. They show one safety in the middle of the field. Right before the ball gets snapped, they show two safeties in the middle of the field. Ball gets snapped. Nobody's playing deep. They double Tyreek. They double Jalen Waddle. They have two spies on Tua, and then they rush two guys. As a quarterback, you're sitting there going, I got no idea what I'm looking at right now. So Josh is going to have to be so good with not trying to be perfect and trusting the rules of the offense, because you can get yourself into trouble if you try to be perfect. I think Joe can help with his play calls with that. And then I think, there's going to be moments when I don't think you can just focus on James and focus on the tight ends. I do believe Shakir, they don't have enough cover people in many ways, and we'll see how much they spy Joshua with who. Who does McDuffie cover? Is he covering Cook? Is he covering Shakir? Is he covering Steph? And who's covering the tight ends? Because at some point you run out of humans.
Yeah, and as you see this game coming, it's the first time in the playoffs that in this era, in this Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen era, that this game's going to take place in Buffalo. How big a difference is that going to make at this point with these guys that are, at least for the quarterbacks who are veterans? I mean, they played a ton of road games between them, but it seems to mean something,
massive.
Right?
Oh yeah. My goodness, it's massive. And the reason why, Steve, is this: it always matters. Playoff football better than anybody in the world. It always matters. But this year, if you were going to ask me, why have the Kansas City Chiefs struggled on offense? I'll give you 3 reasons. Number one, the drops. That's going to happen home or road, more than likely. 2, the offensive tackles are not good. Okay, well, you got to play on the road in noise. They don't get to hear the quarterback's cadence. Advantage Buffalo. Advantage rush. Advantage a creative coach that's going to formulate those one-on-ones. And then the third thing is they have struggled to communicate receiver and quarterback on the same page. So you're not going to have the times where Patrick can stand there at the line of scrimmage and go, hey, Travis, be ready. Or hey, Rashee Rice, give me your eyes quick. You're not going to be able to have that because you can't hear, right? And I think that has to be an advantage. Listen, you have earned the right to go through hell and get the 2 seed. To sit here and say at that place, I mean, you guys remember I called that Titan game last year on Monday Night Football, and my big takeaway was if this place can host the NFC Championship game, man, it would be, or AFC, it would be off the charts. I think this is the AFC Championship game in the eyes of Buffalo. So I absolutely think it matters.
Good
Dan,
stuff,
thanks.
Man.
Thanks as always for the time. We appreciate it. Enjoy the games this weekend. We only got 8 teams left here.
No
Be
doubt.
fun.
You guys too. Be well. Be safe. Okay.
All right, man.
Thanks, Dan.